Hey up, it's Steve from that old Yorkshire Geek, and it's time to do my top 5 films from each year since I've been born, or whatever the title is. I still haven't figured it out. I've had time, haven't I, to think of one, because it's been a while since 1982, the episode covering 1982, but we're up to 1983, as you can see. The only reason I haven't done an episode for quite a while, I think it was about June time, so it's been a few months since I did one, is because I forgot. I forgot all about it. And I thought, ooh, I came across I think I came across one of my thumbnails, and I thought, ooh, I haven't done one of those for a while, have I? So I thought I'd better do it now. So here we go. So it was top 5 films, my personal top 5 films of 1983. It's not a list that's not in any order. It's just my personal favourites, not saying they're the best films of 1983, just my personal 5 favourite films. I've also got 9 honourable mentions, which we're going to get to. But first up, let's just get on with the list, shall we? First up is the obvious one, I suppose, from 1983, is Return of the Jedi, aka Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Let's just Return of the Jedi in it, everybody. The third of the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, the film that basically, you know, it rounded it off, didn't it? We had a happy ending for everybody. The Empire, spoilers by the way, the Empire was defeated at the end, or the Emperor was at least, and good prevailed. And that's where they should have just left it, shouldn't they, really? But they didn't. They came back in 2015 and carried on and made a hash of it. Although I did like The Force Awakens. Anywho, Return of the Jedi, directed by Richard Marquand, written by Lawrence Kasdan, who had a co-writing credit as well on Empire Strikes Back, along with Lee Brackett, who passed away, unfortunately. And George Lucas, story by George Lucas, produced by Howard Kazanjian. No sign of Gary Kurtz, which is why some people think maybe this is why this film really isn't as good as the first two, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, because that had Gary Kurtz essentially reining in George Lucas, and they had a falling out. I think he did start work on Return of the Jedi, did Gary Kurtz, but they had a falling out and he left, or, you know, whatever. And so George was, you know, he had too much power by this time, and that might explain why some of the decisions he made in this film were a bit iffy. Anyway, obviously it stars the usual gang: Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Billy D. Williams, Anthony Daniels, Carrie Fisher. Did I say Carrie Fisher? I'll say it twice. Dave Prowse as Vader. Although there was another scene where they had another actor, I can't remember his name, I keep forgetting. I've seen a photo of him. Who basically it was used in like a pickup shot of I think it was Vader holding Luke's lightsaber. You know, when Luke is captured on Endor. They got another fella in to do that. Kenny Baker, Peter Mayhew, Frank Oz, you know, the usual stuff. Tim Rose doing Admiral Akbar and others. The great music from John Williams. It's a great film. It is a great film. It grossed $374 million worldwide in its initial theatrical run. It's probably done more than that since. It got a special edition, which was not very well received. Much like the special edition for Star Wars wasn't very well received, really. The only one of those 3 special editions of that original trilogy that were pretty well done were Empire Strikes Back. Although they did kind of flatten the Millennium Falcon, and it was flying through Cloud City. You know, cool that they showed it flying through Cloud City. And it looked flat. And then when it got to the landing thing, it was a big chunky Millennium Falcon landing, but never mind. Anyway, whatever. Anywho, so there we go. So that's Return of the Jedi. It's a cool film, and everybody should have seen it. And Richard Marquand did a good job. And he made some decisions in that film that George, I think, wouldn't have made. So, you know, some people say, oh, he was just a director for hire, and it was essentially George Lucas that directed the film. I think they're wrong. I think Richard Marquand did put his stamp on it, and he's now unfortunately passed away. But I'm trying to think what he said, what it was that was his idea, and I can't remember what it was. It might be something to do with Yoda. I've forgotten. But he said, no, we need. I think it was the Yoda scene. I don't think George Lucas wanted the Yoda scene in it. Something like that. I could be wrong. But Richard Marquand fought for it because George Lucas wasn't going to put it in. But I might be misremembering. I might be having another Mandela effect. I'm having a lot of those lately. Anywho, let's move on to number 2. Again, it's not a countdown. It's not in any order. It's just a list. Number 2, James Bond, Octopussy. It's not one of the best James Bond films, but I love me Bond films. Even the bad ones. Even Never Say Never Again and For Your Eyes Only, which I class as, lower tier Bond films. And Octopus is kind of up there, but it is really good. I think it came out at the same time as Never Say Never Again, and I think it essentially beat it at the box office, I think. But anyway, this one sees Roger Moore come back as 007, directed by John Glenn. I think he did quite a few in the 80s, didn't he, John Glenn? He became the Bond director de jour, didn't he, of the 80s. He did a few of them. Anyway, screenplay by George MacDonald Fraser, Richard Maybaum, and Michael G. Wilson, based on the book by Fleming, allegedly, probably. I don't know. It was a short story when it was Octopussy. I've not read any of the Fleming Bond books, although I think I've said before, I think I do have them on a Kindle somewhere, but I can't find my Kindle. I can't say, I can't go to one of my other Kindle devices, like my Amazon Fire, and get it because never mind. Anyway, but well, anyway, so it stars Roger Moore, Maud Adams, in her second appearance in a Bond film as a different character. She was also in The Man with the Golden Gun. I think she died in that. I think she was killed by the Man with the Golden Gun, I think. Louis Jordan as the bad guy, Christina Wayborn as a Bond girl, and other people. Who else? What's her face were in it as well, wasn't she? As Goodnight. I've forgotten the name now. What they call her? Hang on, I've got to check now. Where is she? She's got way down on this list. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Man with the Golden Gun. I'm thinking of Britt Eklund. She was in The Man with the Golden Gun. Because we're talking about it with Maud Adams. Never mind. Edit that bit out. Maybe. Or might not. So I've got Stephen Burkoff as another baddie, and VJ Amritraj as a friend of Bond. It was what they call it, a badminton player for India, and went into acting. He also appeared in Star Trek. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, as the captain of the Yorktown. Anyway, the usual ones got Robert Brown as M, Desmond Llewellyn as Q, Walter Gottel appears as Gogol, General Gogol, and Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny. No, it didn't. I wouldn't have said this. This might be Lois Maxwell's last appearance, but it didn't. It isn't. And it's a good romp. It's all about baddie Russian general wanting to nuke an American base, basically start World War III, and Bond has to sort it out essentially. And it's all good fun. It's all good fun. Who does the music for this one? I can't remember. John Barry. John Barry did the music for this. So there we go. And it's a lot of fun. Some people don't like it because it ends up. At the end, it's got Roger Moore dressed up as a clown, trying to save the world, dressed as a clown. Some people think it demeans James Bond. But probably Roger Moore, he's got these sense of humour that he'd probably like that. He'd probably think, yeah, I'm dressed up as a clown saving the world. But some people probably thought it demeaned James Bond. Anyway, so there we go, that's Octopussy. It's a lot of fun. Give it a whirl. Although it's not one of the best Bond films. Next up, a bit of sci-fi fantasy now, from Krull, from the planet Krull, also the name of the film. A cool sci-fi fantasy, and one that, I don't know, I think it inspired me quite a lot when I was younger. Because I started writing a sci-fi fantasy film, I suppose you could say, was inspired by Krull. I started writing a story called The Staff of Karnath, which I never finished. And that was about, like, a fantasy world, with horses and stuff like that. It didn't have dragons and stuff, but people in like a medieval society or a dark age society or whatever. But their world gets invaded by aliens. I'm going off on a tangent now. So about their fight against these aliens that have invaded their world, and that's essentially what Krull is about. This like medieval society that gets invaded by the Beast in his big mountainous spaceship that lands, and it's cool, and the effects are amazing in it. I think they are anyway. Directed by Peter Yates, stars Ken Marshall, who would go on to be in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as a bad guy. Lisette Anthony, who had a voice dubbed, God knows why, I have no idea. Freddie Jones, Francesca Annis, Alan Armstrong, David Batley, Bernard Breslaw as the Cyclops, and early appearances from the likes of Liam Neeson, Todd Carty, and Robbie Coltrane. So there we go. It is a cool film, and I think it's stood the test of time. Some people say, the effects are a bit rubbish, but they're all practical effects, because it's 1983, done by Derek Meddings and his genius team. And I think it's really, really good, and I think Krull is an underrated film. I think it was one of the most expensive British films ever made at the time, by the way, and it didn't do well, which is why we never got a sequel to it. But anyway, like I say, it's got a cult following. How much did it cost? About £30 million. As I said, I think it was one of the most expensive British films made at the time. And cool music from James Horner with a great theme. And anyway, so there we go. So that's Krull. As I said, it's about the Beast and his army of slayers invade this world, kill the royal families of, so that they can control the world and all that stuff. But they take away the king's daughter, Lissa, played by Lisette Anthony. The Beast wants to marry her for whatever reason, and but there's a prophecy that somebody will come and defeat the Beast and save the girl, and their child shall rule Krull, and then one day and their offspring shall rule the galaxy and all that. But anyway, whatever. But anyway, so that's Krull. Give it a whirl. Cool effects. They've got like laser guns that they can only fire once, and then they've got to use it as a sword, and the sparks and stuff, and it's cool. Right, let's move on to the next one. Number 4 is Trading Places, a comedy. The comedy from John Landis, starring Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy, Ralph Bellamy, Don Amici, Denham Elliott, and Jamie Lee Curtis. I watched this quite recently, actually. My mate came up to visit, and we were looking for something to watch, and I think we were scrolling through Amazon or some I think it was Amazon, yeah. And Trading Places just happened to be, just popped up, and mate says, I haven't seen that for ages, shall we watch it? I'm like, yeah, why not? And it's an amazing film. It won't get made today, or if it did, if they did a remake of it today, it would be changed a lot. It's very of its time. But it is really funny in places, and it's a good film about, Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici play two rich businessmen who place a bet that they can ruin the life of one of their top employees, played by Dan Aykroyd, and put a lowly person of colour in his place, with no education, and he'll do just as well. That's what their bet is, which is Eddie Murphy. And there we go. And so hijinks ensue. And the only thing I don't like about it, or I don't really understand it, is the end bit. When they go to like the stock exchange or wherever it is, and they start doing all this. I've got this, sell. I don't really understand how all that works, because it is beyond my ken. But it did well anyway at the box office. Had a budget of $15 million and did $120 million at the box office, so it did well. And it's got a cool musical score from Elmer Bernstein, and it's really, really good. So I'll give it a whirl. I don't know how a fella in a gorilla suit can get mistaken for a real gorilla, but I think they were supposed to be the keepers were supposed to be like high on drugs, so they couldn't tell the difference. Anyway, so there we go. And finally, the last one of my top 5 of 1983 is Superman 3, a film that I think gets wrongly relegated as a bad film, but I really like Superman 3. Directed by Richard Lester, who suppose you could say co-directed Superman 2, although he got the credit, but Superman 2 were mostly directed by Richard Donner, wasn't it? But I think his scenes that he did in Superman 2 were pretty well done. The Paris scene and all that, I thought that were fine. In a lot of ways, I prefer the theatrical version of Superman 2 to the Richard Donner cut, in a lot of ways. But anyway, he did Superman 3 all by himself, and it had more of a comedic edge to it. They even got Richard Pryor in to play the bad guy turned good guy. Spoilers. Some of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is a lot of fun. It stars Christopher Reeve, obviously, as Superman, Richard Pryor, excuse me, Robert Vaughn, Margot Kidder, the usual gang, Jackie Cooper, Mark McClure, Annette O'Toole appears as Lana Lang, Annie Ross, and Pamela Stevenson in a memorable role, shall we say. It's the film where Superman turns bad. The bad guy, Robert Vaughn, basically wants to kill Superman because he's interfering with his plans for world domination. And he sets Richard Pryor, who turns out to be this lowly man, a bit like in Trading Places. He was like a man with nothing, who ended up, doing something for himself. And it turned out he was amazing at computers. And they show that by him basically typing in BASIC, because that's what they had back in 1983, wasn't it? 10 print Gus Gorman is amazing, semicolon. 20 go to 10. Just a lot of that on screens. It wants Gus Gorman to find kryptonite or whatever to destroy Superman, but it doesn't quite do that because there's some element in this meteorite or something that is unknown. So he just makes something up and puts it in. I think he puts tar in. He looks in his cigarette packet and sees tar. And the thing that they get, it doesn't kill Superman. It turns him bad. So he starts doing bad things. And then we end up with the Superman fight in the junkyard, where Superman splits into two, the good side and the bad side, and the good side wins and all that stuff. It's cool. I really like Superman 3. I think you should give it a whirl. Sometimes it gets a bit too invested in the jokes and the funny stuff and things that don't make sense, like when Gus Gorman's drunk and programming a computer and making all things go haywire in the world. That gets a bit daft, but anyway, give it a whirl. I really like Superman 3, so I will not hear it being disdained. Is that a word? Don't know. So there we go. That was my top 5. So right, let's move on to the honourable mentions. Got quite a few of these. I said 9 of them. So first up is Extra, a British horror film, which I don't know if it was classed as a video nasty back in the day. But it disappeared for a while and then reappeared again, going from memory. But it is a good film. There's a few sequels and they're not even connected. Extra is weird. It's a weird British sci-fi horror film about a man that gets abducted by aliens and then he comes back at some point later, but he's been turned into an alien. And there's like a body horror scene where essentially is birthed again out of a woman as an adult man, and that's quite gruesome and stuff. But there's some cool effects in it, and for the time, and there's a bit where an action man comes to life and murders somebody, and it's all a good bit of fun, but it has a weird ending. It's weird all the way through, but it's worth a watch, and I like Extra. Next up, another horror film, The Entity, which we did on Friday Night at Point with Fear a while back. Stars Barbara Hershey and Ron Silver, allegedly based on a true story about a woman that is sexually assaulted by a supernatural force, and it's a really well made film. It's a really good film with some cool special effects in it, practical effects, of the assault going on, which I had to edit out. I had to go through the film and put black bars and stuff for Friday Night at Point with Fear. Because YouTube would have gone mental. But anyway, it's a really good film. I really like it. There's one scene in the film that's essentially exactly like what happened in real life. If you watch the shows like Sightings and stuff like that, they covered the Entity case and showed like photos and stuff that were taken at the time of the happenings, and they tried to match, what happened in the film with those photos and stuff. But I think the ending, I don't think that happened in real life. The kind of fantastical ending where they try and trap the spirit, whatever it is, with like liquid nitrogen or something like that. It doesn't. It works, but it doesn't work. If you know what I mean. Anywho, so there we go. Moving on. So that's the Entity. Give it a whirl. Sidney J. Fury, by the way, directed that one. Next up, a bit of fun, bit of comedy. Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, which I think was the last of the Monty Python films. I think. I don't think they've done one since. I could be wrong. But that's more of a sketch film than the previous two, because Life of Brian and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they had like continuous stories, didn't they? There was like one story, but Meaning of Life more like different sketches about the meaning of life and stuff like that. Probably the most famous scene is the Mr. Creosote scene. There's this big man in a restaurant who wants to eat everything. He eventually explodes and it's all gruesome. But it's funny. It's funny and rude and a bit gruesome in places as well. But it's Monty Python. So that's what you expect. Next up is Psycho 2. Obviously the sequel to Psycho, 23 years later. Directed by Richard Franklin and written by Tom Holland of Fright Night, Child's Play fame. Got Anthony Perkins back to play Norman Bates. Got Vera Miles back to play Lila Crane. Tom Holland appears as a deputy. And Meg Tilly as well. And it's a sequel that is a lot better than it deserves to be completely honest. Or a lot better than you expect it to be. And it's a true sequel. It's it doesn't mess about with the lore, I suppose. It's Norman Bates. He spent 23 years or whatever in essentially a lunatic asylum, and now he's been let out. Goes back to the motel, tries doing stuff, and then things start happening, and people start dying again. So there we go. There's a twist at the end, and I won't spoil it because it's a film worth watching, and it's one of those films I think probably not everybody's seen it. Probably everybody knows it's there, but probably not everybody's seen it, and or if they've seen it, they might have forgotten about it. So give it a whirl. Give Psycho 2 a whirl. Right, so next up, Twilight Zone, the movie. A notorious film in many ways, obviously based on the TV series by Rod Serling. It had different sections directed by the one by John Landis, which is the notorious section, in which people died and John Landis ended up in court and somehow got away with it, I think. Vic Morrow passed away in that scene. Well, not passed away, got killed when the helicopter crashed on him, essentially. Killed him and 2 children. There were lots of illegalities going on, but he got away with it somehow. I think he did anyway. There's that one directed by John Landis, a segment directed by Steven Spielberg, which wasn't very good. You'd think he'd get the good section, wouldn't you? The good bit to do, but his one is a bit boring, to be completely honest. Kick the can, I think that's what it was called. And then a section directed by Joe Dante, which is a fun one. Got a lot of effects in it and stuff like that. It's the one about the boy that can make things, real, make his fantasies real, which is a bit scary in places. Actually, it's very scary in places. Probably the scariest one of the segments. And then the final one is the one directed by George Miller of Mad Max fame, doing the terror. Is it Terror at 30,000 feet or Horror at 30,000 feet? I can't remember. There's something on the wing. That one. With what's his face? Lithgow, John Lithgow, playing the William Shatner role, and that's really good as well. And it also had bits in between with Dan Aykroyd in it. But it's a good film. It's a Twilight Zone movie. It's just marred by the controversy. But anyway, moving on. Next up, we've got Blue Thunder, the film that inspired the TV series. And probably inspired the TV series. There was a Blue Thunder TV series starring. I forgot his name. Starring somebody. Not Roy Scheider. I can't remember his name now. No, it's gone. Never mind. Anyway, the movie starring Roy Scheider, directed by John Badham, and it's a good conspiracy thriller. It's got Malcolm McDowell in it as the bad guy. It's about super high tech helicopter, that's stealth mode. Just makes the blades go quieter. How that happens, I don't know. Maybe it's a real thing, I don't know. But they put stealth mode in there, it just goes instead of like helicopter blades do. Anyway, and it's got all these super ace weapons and all that on it. It's about that, and the police are using it for some reason. Why don't they give it to the army? No, the police are using it. But there we go. And as I said, I think it also inspired Airwolf as well, which came out a few years later. But the TV series wasn't bad. It had Roy Scheider, Daniel Stern, Candy Clark, and I forgot his name, and somebody else. I won't type in. Give it a whirl. It's a good film, it's Blue Thunder. Next up, another James Bond film, the one from the same year, which I mentioned earlier, came out at the same time-ish as Octopussy. Never Say Never Again, where Sean Connery returned as James Bond 007, directed by Irving Kershner of Empire Strikes Back fame. And it's a fun film. It's a remake of Thunderball, produced by Kevin McClory. I had to think about his name. Jack Whittingham and Ian Fleming. Story was by them, sorry. Produced by Kevin McClory and Jack Schwartzman. I'd say there was a long legal battle between Kevin McClory and Eon Productions, the Broccolis and Harry Saltzman, because Kevin McClory, claimed that he, along with Ian Fleming, essentially they had a party or something at is it GoldenEye, Ian Fleming's house, where Kevin McClory and Jack Whittingham and Ian Fleming came up with the story of Thunderball. And Ian Fleming basically took all the glory, and Kevin McClory sued. So that's why you didn't see Spectre in a lot of the Broccoli Bond films, because they weren't allowed to use Spectre for a while. But then they got them back. Anyway, it's a fun film, as I said, essentially a remake of Thunderball. Whereas in Thunderball, Spectre hijacked a Vulcan bomber with atomic bombs on. In this one, they hijack nuclear missiles. It stars Sean Connery, Klaus Maria Brandauer as the bad guy, Max von Sydow as Ernst Stavro Blofeld, Barbara Carrera in fine form as I forgot the name now. Blush, Fatima Blush. She's mental in it, but she plays a good role. It's probably better than the Thunderball version, but not as gorgeous in my opinion. She wasn't called Fatima Blush in that either. I forgot what she was called. But anyway, Kim Basinger in an early role. Take her or leave her. I've never seen what people see in Kim Basinger, but me. Although she was good in LA Confidential. Bernie Casey. I think Bernie Casey plays Felix Leiter in this. Let me check. I think he does. Yes, he does. So there we go. So I've got Rowan Atkinson in. Edward Fox. Edward Fox is M. That's how Edward Fox talks. Bond. But there's no Q in it. There's a quartermaster. Alec McGowan plays Algie or Algernon as the quartermaster, but they don't call him Q. But and it's the that says expect lots of gratuitous sex and mayhem. Dear. And there we go. Anyway, so it is a fun film, but essentially it's a remake of Thunderball with many of the same beats, some updated special effects and stunts and stuff like that. But anyway, give that one a whirl. As next up is The Dead Zone, based on a Stephen King book. It's directed by David Cronenberg. I think personally probably David Cronenberg's second best film after The Fly. But it's pretty close because this is a pretty amazing film, I think. Produced by Deborah Hill, famous for working with John Carpenter on Halloween and stuff like that. Stars Christopher Walken, Brooke Adams, Tom Skerritt, Herbert Lom, Anthony Zerbe, Colleen Dewhurst and Martin Sheen in a memorable role. As I said, it's based on the Stephen King book about a man called, I forgot his name now, Johnny Smith, who has some sort of accident or something happens to him and is in a coma for many years. When he comes to, he finds out that when he touches somebody, he can see their future. So it goes through all these, I won't call them adventures, but all these incidents happen with him where he touches somebody, sees their future, and then in the end, spoilers, in the end, he shakes hand inadvertently. His hand is grabbed by a presidential candidate, and he sees the future that this presidential candidate, Martin Sheen, is essentially going to end the world. He's going to launch missiles and start World War III. The missiles are flying, hallelujah, he says in it. So is to go and basically assassinate this presidential candidate. So there we go. And he saves the world. Spoilers. It's a cool film. It's a really good film. I think it's one of the better Stephen King adaptations, and I think it's David Cronenberg's, if not second best film. It's joint first with The Fly. It's up there, I think it is. And it almost made the actual top 5. And finally, another Stephen King adaptation is Christine, directed by John Carpenter, based on Stephen King's book, obviously. And this is a film I wasn't keen on initially when I saw it. I think I saw it when I was young. 'Cause 1983, I was 16, so I wasn't a fully formed adult, and I found it a bit boring. It was a horror film, but it didn't have many horrific scenes in, to be completely honest. And I found it a bit boring, but I've grown to love it over the years, and it's a really good film. Anyway, as I said, directed by John Carpenter, screenplay by Bill Phillips, based on Stephen King's book. Stars Keith Gordon in a memorable role, John Stockwell, Alexandra Paul, Robert Prosky, Harry Dean Stanton, and the car in question, which is Christine. Who did the music? Obviously, music by John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. Had a budget of 10 million, box office of 21 million, so I suppose it did okay. Didn't blow the world alight, did it? Anyway, apparently a remake is in development. I didn't know that. I've just read that there. Anyway, so it's about this. I think it starts showing Christine, the car, being built in the 50s. A red Plymouth, a red 1988 Plymouth Fury, and from the very beginning, she's claiming lives or whatever. Where she the hood shuts on a worker's hand, and another worker's found dead inside. Anyway, like 20 years later-ish, I think 21 years. It's 1978. It's set in. Arnie Cunningham, who sounds like he should be in Happy Days, shouldn't he? Who's Keith Gordon, finds is a bit of a nerd and gets bullied at school. He finds the car. He finds Christine in like a scrapyard or whatever. Or this fella's got it under a tarp and he wants to buy it. So it basically buys the car, but it needs a lot of work, and essentially the car starts to possess him, and he begins to change, and instead of being the nerdy kid, he becomes a cool kid, and he starts doing the bullying sometimes. He gets the girl who originally were out of his league, Alexandra Paul, and he starts dating her, but she starts seeing the change in him, and he starts becoming, not violent, but violent and nasty and all that stuff. And it's a good film, and the car rebuilds itself. It goes out, can drive itself. It goes out killing people, being set on fire, being smashed up, and it goes back into its garage and basically rebuilds itself. There's a good scene I think where he says "show me," and he goes into it and he says he sees the car all smashed up or whatever, and he says "show me," and he shows the car rebuilding itself in really cool ways, really imaginative, in camera ways of showing a car building itself back up. Sometimes reverse shots like a glass going back into lights and windscreens and stuff, but also some interesting stuff where I thought, how did they do that? We'll have to look that up, how they did that. But it were all done, with pulleys and levers and all that stuff, and it's cool and it's a good film. It's a good film, but it's not exactly action-packed. It has its moments, and it's but it's not super gory or anything like that. But anyway, it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch. Right, so there we go. So that's my list for 1983. So we'll leave it there. We'll go through, though, one last time. We'll go through the list. First up, we had my top 5, which was Return of the Jedi, a.k.a. Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. That was followed by Octopussy. Then we had Krull. And then we had laughs with Trading Places. And then finally, more laughs with Superman 3. And then we had me 9 honourable mentions, which were Extra, The Entity, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, Psycho 2, Twilight Zone the movie, Blue Thunder, Never Say Never Again, Never Say Never Again, sorry I couldn't help myself, The Dead Zone, and Christine. So there we go, so that's it. That's my list for 1983. So, we will leave it there, and hopefully it won't be months and months before I do 1984. But anyway, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share the videos, and drop a comment, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed already, and all that stuff, and go to the store and buy t-shirts and whatever, and go to my Patreon and subscribe to my Patreon. But we'll leave it there, so thanks for watching, and wherever you are, look after each other, and until next time, I'll say there.